Imagine this. It's 3 a.m. in your Chicago apartment, and you're lying there staring at the ceiling, wondering how you're going to find the strength to face another day. The bills are piling up, your relationship feels strained, and that promotion you've been working toward just got handed to someone else. Sound familiar? If you've ever felt like life is throwing everything it's got at you, you're definitely not alone. Here's the thing, though. About 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius was dealing with plagues, wars, and political chaos that would make our modern problems look like a walk in the park. Yet he found a way not just to survive, but to thrive and lead an empire through some of the darkest times in history. How? Through the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. And today, I'm going to share 8 of those time-tested strategies that can transform your hardest days into your strongest moments. But first, I want to say thank you. Our Stoic community just crossed 50,000 subscribers, which means 50,000 people just like you who refuse to give up when life gets tough. That's not just a number. That's proof that there are people out there committed to becoming mentally stronger, more resilient, and more at peace with whatever life throws at them. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what we're about to dive into isn't your typical self-help fluff. These are battle-tested principles that have helped everyone from ancient emperors to modern CEOs navigate their darkest moments and come out stronger on the other side. Now, here's my challenge to you. I want you to watch this entire video. Not because I need the watch time, but because I want you to prove to yourself that you're serious about pushing through when things get tough. Anyone can start something when they're motivated, but it takes real character to stick with it when motivation fades. Do you have that character? Let's find out. These aren't just feel-good quotes you'll forget by tomorrow morning. These are practical, actionable strategies that you can start using today. Whether you're dealing with work stress in Manhattan, relationship problems in Los Angeles, or just that general feeling that life is overwhelming you faster than you can keep up. The ancient Stoics called this practical wisdom, philosophy that actually works in the real world, not just in books. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into 8 ancient secrets that can help you not just survive your hard days, but actually use them to become the strongest version of yourself you've ever been. 1. Why your 3 a.m. anxiety won't stop and how to fix it right now. Let me guess. You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. and your brain decides it's the perfect time to replay every mistake you've ever made, worry about tomorrow's presentation, and convince you that everything in your life is falling apart? Maybe you're in your Denver apartment thinking about that job interview next week, or you're in Boston stressing about a relationship that's been rocky lately. Your heart's racing, your mind won't shut off, and you feel completely powerless to make it stop. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain is time traveling. It's bouncing between regrets from yesterday and fears about tomorrow, and in the process, it's completely abandoning the one place where you actually have any real power. Right here, right now, in this present moment. Marcus Aurelius, who literally had the weight of the Roman Empire on his shoulders, understood this better than anyone. He wrote in his personal journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about that for a second. This guy was dealing with plagues, wars, and political conspiracies that could end his life at any moment. Yet he found his strength not by trying to control those external circumstances, but by focusing on the one thing he could actually control, his response to them. But how do you actually do this when you're lying there at 3 a.m. feeling like your world is spinning out of control? Let me give you a technique that works immediately. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method, and it forces your brain back into the present moment where your real power lives. Right now, wherever you are, identify 5 things you can see. Maybe it's your phone screen, a lamp, a picture on the wall, your coffee cup, and a book on your nightstand. Really look at them. Notice their colors, their shapes, their details. Next, identify 4 things you can physically feel. The temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of your clothes, the weight of your body in your chair, the surface you're touching. Now 3 things you can hear. Maybe it's traffic outside, the hum of your air conditioner, or the sound of your own breathing. 2 things you can smell and 1 thing you can taste. What just happened? Your brain stopped time traveling and came back to the present moment. And in the present moment, you're not dealing with yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's uncertainties. You're dealing with what's actually happening right now, which is usually much more manageable than the stories your anxious mind creates. I remember talking to Sarah, a marketing manager in Los Angeles who used to have panic attacks every Sunday night thinking about the week ahead. She'd lie in bed catastrophizing about meetings, deadlines, and all the ways things could go wrong. But when she started practicing present moment awareness, something shifted. Instead of fighting her anxiety or trying to solve every problem at once, she'd simply acknowledge, right now, I'm safe in my bed. Right now, I'm breathing normally. Right now, this moment is actually okay. The Stoics understood that most of our suffering doesn't come from what's actually happening to us. It comes from the stories we tell ourselves about what's happening. When you're stuck in traffic on the 405 in Los Angeles, the traffic itself isn't the problem. The problem is the story you're telling yourself. I'm going to be late. My boss is going to be angry. This always happens to me. My whole day is ruined. But what if you changed the story? What if instead you thought, this traffic is outside my control, but how I respond to it isn't. I can use this time to listen to a podcast, practice breathing, or just be present with myself. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about recognizing that in any given moment, you have more power than you think. You can't control the traffic, but you can control whether you use that time to stress yourself out or to practice patience. You can't control whether you get that promotion, but you can control how much effort you put into your work and how you handle the outcome either way. Here's a practical exercise you can try tonight. When you find your mind racing about tomorrow or replaying yesterday, simply ask yourself, what do I need to do right now? Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. Maybe the answer is nothing. I need to sleep. Maybe it's take 3 deep breaths. Maybe it's write down my worries so I can deal with them tomorrow. But by focusing on what you can actually do in this moment, you're taking back your power from anxiety and placing it where it belongs, in your hands in the present. The ancient Stoics had a phrase, the present moment is the only time over which we have dominion. Your anxiety wants you to believe you're powerless, but the truth is you have complete dominion over this moment right now. And if you can master this moment, you can master the next one, and the one after that, until those 3 a.m. anxiety spirals become a thing of the past. 2. The 2-minute gratitude trick that changes everything. Let's be honest. When you're having one of those days where everything seems to go wrong, the last thing you want to hear is someone telling you to just be grateful. Maybe you're sitting in your Seattle coffee shop after getting turned down for another job, or you're walking through Miami Beach feeling like everyone else has their life figured out except you. In those moments, gratitude can feel like a cruel joke, right? But here's what I discovered, and what the ancient Stoics knew thousands of years ago. Gratitude isn't about pretending your problems don't exist or forcing yourself to smile when you feel like crying. Real gratitude, the kind that actually changes your life, is about training your brain to see the full picture of your reality, not just the parts that hurt. Seneca, one of the wisest Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly: true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Notice he didn't say ignore your problems or pretend everything is perfect. He said learn to find joy in what you have right now, instead of constantly chasing what you think you need to be happy. Let me tell you about Marcus, a guy I know who works construction in Phoenix. Last year, he went through a brutal divorce, lost his apartment, and had to move back in with his parents at age 35. He felt like a complete failure. But instead of drowning in self-pity, he started doing something that seemed almost ridiculous at first. Every morning, he'd spend 2 minutes writing down 3 things he was grateful for, no matter how small. The first day, his list was pretty basic. I'm grateful I have a job. I'm grateful my parents let me stay here. I'm grateful for coffee. But something interesting started happening. As weeks went by, his lists got more specific and more meaningful. I'm grateful my coworker Jake covered for me when I was running late. I'm grateful for the sunset I saw driving home. It reminded me that beautiful things still exist. I'm grateful for the conversation I had with my mom last night. I forgot how wise she is. What Marcus discovered is what neuroscientists now know to be true. Gratitude literally rewires your brain. When you actively look for things to appreciate, your brain gets better at noticing positive aspects of your life that were always there. You just weren't trained to see them. But here's the real power of this practice, and why the Stoics were so brilliant. Gratitude doesn't just help you appreciate the good stuff. It helps you find meaning in the difficult stuff, too. That job rejection in Seattle? Maybe it's protecting you from a toxic work environment you didn't know about. That feeling of being behind in life while walking on Miami Beach? Maybe it's teaching you that your timeline doesn't have to match everyone else's. Seneca wrote about this beautifully. He said that even our struggles deserve gratitude because they're opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Every challenge you face is like a workout for your character. You don't thank the gym weights for being heavy, but you're grateful for what they do for your muscles. Here's the 2-minute trick that changes everything, and you can start doing it tonight. Before you go to bed, write down 3 specific things you're grateful for from that day. But here's the key. At least one of them has to be something that initially seemed negative or challenging. For example, I'm grateful for the traffic jam on I-285 in Atlanta because it gave me time to call my sister and really talk for the first time in months. Or, I'm grateful for the criticism my boss gave me today because it showed me exactly what I need to work on to get better at my job. Or even, I'm grateful for feeling lonely tonight because it's motivating me to reach out and build deeper friendships. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending bad things are actually good. It's about training yourself to look for the hidden gifts that often come wrapped in uncomfortable packages. Sometimes the worst day you've had in months teaches you something about yourself that you couldn't have learned any other way. I remember talking to Lisa, a nurse in Chicago who was completely burned out from working double shifts during the pandemic. She felt exhausted, unappreciated, and honestly pretty bitter about her situation. But when she started practicing this kind of gratitude, something shifted. She began writing things like, "I'm grateful for how tired I am because it shows me how much I care about my patients," and "I'm grateful for this difficult shift because I got to hold Mrs. Johnson's hand when she was scared, and I remembered why I became a nurse in the first place." The magic happens when you realize that gratitude isn't about your circumstances. It's about your perspective on your circumstances. You can be grateful for your morning coffee even if you're drinking it in a studio apartment instead of a mansion. You can be grateful for a friend's text message even if you wish you had more friends. You can be grateful for your health even if you're not in perfect shape. Here's what most people get wrong about gratitude. They think it's about settling for less or giving up on their dreams. But the Stoics understood that gratitude actually gives you more energy to pursue your goals, not less. When you appreciate what you have, you're not operating from a place of desperate need or bitter resentment. You're operating from a place of abundance and strength. Try this tonight. Set a timer for 2 minutes. Write down 3 things you're genuinely grateful for from today. Make them specific, make them real, and make at least one of them something that challenged you or pushed you to grow. Do this for just 1 week, and I promise you'll start seeing your life and your problems in a completely different light. Remember what Seneca said, "True happiness comes from enjoying what you have right now, not from constantly chasing what you think you need next." And the beautiful thing about gratitude is that it's always available to you. No matter what's happening in your life, it's a choice you can make at any moment, and it's a choice that changes everything. 3. Stop worrying about things you can't control. Do this instead. Imagine this. You're sitting in the Atlanta airport, and your flight just got delayed for the 3rd time. Your connecting flight in Dallas is looking impossible, which means you're going to miss your sister's wedding rehearsal dinner. You can feel your stress levels rising as you frantically refresh the airline app, call customer service for the 4th time, and mentally calculate how much an Uber from Dallas to the venue would cost. Sound familiar? Here's what's happening in that moment. You're pouring all your mental energy into something that's completely outside your control. The weather's causing the delays? Can't control it. The airline's staffing issues? Can't control that either. The fact that your sister chose to get married during storm season? Definitely can't control that. But there's something you absolutely can control in that situation. And it's the one thing that will determine whether you arrive at that wedding feeling frazzled and bitter or calm and present. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who understood suffering better than most, he was literally a slave for much of his life, taught us one of the most liberating truths ever discovered. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. This isn't just philosophical wisdom. It's practical psychology that can save your sanity. Think about it. How much of your daily stress comes from trying to control things that are fundamentally outside your control? Your boss's mood, your ex's behavior, the stock market, other people's opinions of you, whether it rains on your vacation, if your team wins the game, and whether your kids listen to your advice. The list is endless, and it's exhausting. But here's what changes everything. The moment you truly understand the difference between what you can and can't control, you stop wasting energy on the impossible and start focusing that energy on what actually matters. It's like the difference between trying to push a boulder uphill versus walking around it to get where you need to go. Let me tell you about David, a software engineer in San Francisco who used to lose sleep every night worrying about whether his startup would get funding. He'd lie awake running scenarios, checking his email obsessively, and driving himself crazy trying to predict what investors were thinking. Then he learned this Stoic principle and made a simple list: things he could control versus things he can't control. Whether investors say yes, the current market conditions, what his competitors are doing, the economy, and other people's opinions about his idea. Can control the quality of his product, how well he prepares for meetings, his attitude during presentations, how he responds to rejection, whether he keeps improving his skills, and how he treats his team. The shift was immediate. Instead of spending hours refreshing TechCrunch and worrying about market trends, David started spending those hours actually improving his product and practicing his pitch. Instead of losing sleep over things he couldn't influence, he focused on becoming the best version of himself as an entrepreneur. And you know what happened? His confidence improved, his presentations got better, and yes, he eventually got the funding, but more importantly, he got his peace of mind back. Here's a practical exercise you can do right now. Think about something that's been stressing you out lately. Maybe it's a relationship issue, a work situation, or a family problem. Now draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper. On the left side, write can't control. On the right side, write can control. Let's say you're worried about your teenage daughter who's been making some questionable choices. Can't control side, her friends, her school environment, peer pressure, social media influences, her natural personality, and the fact that teenagers make mistakes. Can control side, the conversations you have with her, the boundaries you set, how you respond when she messes up, the example you set, whether you stay calm or lose your temper, how much you listen versus lecture. See the difference? When you focus on the left side, you feel helpless and anxious. When you focus on the right side, you feel empowered and purposeful. It's the same situation, but your relationship to it is completely different. The Stoics had a beautiful metaphor for this. They said life is like being caught in a storm at sea. You can't control the wind, the waves, or the weather, but you can control how you adjust your sails, how you navigate, and how you respond to the conditions. The storm isn't the problem. Trying to fight the storm instead of working with it is the problem. I remember talking to Jennifer, a teacher in Houston who was driving herself crazy trying to get through to a particularly difficult student. She'd stay up late planning special lessons, lose sleep worrying about his home situation, and feel personally responsible for his lack of progress. She was trying to control his motivation, his family life, and his attitude, all things completely outside her control. But when she shifted her focus to what she could control, her teaching methods, her patience level, her consistency, her willingness to keep trying new approaches, something interesting happened. She became a better teacher, felt less stressed, and ironically started connecting with that student in ways she hadn't before. She couldn't control his response, but she could control her approach. Here's the life-changing question to ask yourself whenever you feel overwhelmed. What can I actually do about this situation right now? Not tomorrow, not if circumstances were different, but right now, today, with the resources and influence you actually have. Sometimes the answer is nothing, and that's okay. If your flight is delayed, you can't make it take off faster, but you can choose to use that time productively. You can read, call a friend, catch up on work, or simply practice patience. If someone you care about is making bad choices, you can't control their decisions, but you can control how you support them and how you take care of yourself in the process. The ancient Stoics believed that this principle, focusing only on what's within your control, is the foundation of all peace and happiness. And modern psychology backs this up. People who focus on what they can influence are less anxious, more resilient, and more effective at actually solving problems. So the next time you find yourself lying awake at 2 a.m. worrying about something, ask yourself, is this something I can actually control? If the answer is no, practice letting it go. If the answer is yes, make a plan and take action. It's that simple and it's that powerful. Remember, you can't control the storm, but you can always control how you sail through it. And that's where your real power lies. 4. How to build mental toughness when everything falls apart. Let me paint you a picture. It's Tuesday morning in Detroit, and Mike just got the call that his position at the auto plant is being eliminated after 15 years. That same week, his wife tells him she wants a separation, his teenage son gets suspended from school, and his dad goes into the hospital with chest pains. If you were Mike, how would you handle having your entire life seemingly collapse in the span of 7 days? This is where mental toughness separates people who crumble from people who come back stronger. And I'm not talking about the kind of fake toughness where you pretend everything's fine and bottle up your emotions. I'm talking about real inner strength, the kind that lets you feel the full weight of your problems while still finding a way to move forward with purpose and dignity. Epictetus understood this better than almost anyone in history. He was born a slave, spent years being physically abused, and lived with a permanent disability from an injury his master gave him. Yet he became one of the most influential philosophers of all time. How? He discovered that true strength doesn't come from avoiding hardship, it comes from how you respond when hardship is unavoidable. He wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But let's be clear about what this means, because it's not victim blaming or toxic positivity. Epictetus isn't saying that bad things don't really hurt or that you should just smile through trauma. He's saying that while you can't always control what happens to you, you always have some choice in how you respond, and that choice is where your power lies. Think about it like this. Life is like sailing on the ocean. Some days are calm and beautiful with gentle breezes and clear skies. But other days bring storms that threaten to sink your boat. Mental toughness isn't about having a bigger boat or avoiding storms altogether. It's about becoming a skilled sailor who knows how to navigate rough waters without losing your way. Let me tell you about Sarah, a single mom in Portland who lost her job during the pandemic. With 2 kids to support and rent due in 2 weeks, she had every reason to panic. Instead, she did something that showed real mental strength. She gave herself exactly 1 hour to feel sorry for herself, to cry, to be angry, to acknowledge how unfair and scary the situation was. Then she set a timer, and when it went off, she shifted into problem-solving mode. She made a list of every possible option: unemployment benefits, food banks, friends who might need babysitting, skills she could monetize online, and expenses she could cut immediately. She didn't pretend she wasn't scared or that losing her job was somehow a blessing in disguise. She acknowledged the reality of her situation and then focused all her energy on what she could do about it. That's mental toughness, not the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. Not pretending problems don't exist, but refusing to let problems define your entire reality. Here's what most people get wrong about building inner strength. They think it's about becoming emotionally numb or developing a thick skin that nothing can penetrate. But the Stoics understood that real strength comes from emotional intelligence, not emotional numbness. It's about feeling your feelings fully while not letting those feelings control your actions. When everything in Mike's life fell apart in Detroit, he didn't try to pretend he wasn't devastated. He let himself grieve the job he'd loved, the marriage he'd hoped to save, and the stability he'd thought was permanent. But he also made a crucial decision. He wasn't going to let these circumstances write the final chapter of his story. He started each day by asking himself 3 questions that the Stoics would have recognized. What can I learn from this situation? What opportunities might be hidden in this challenge? How can I use this experience to become a stronger person? These weren't feel-good mantras, they were practical tools for redirecting his mental energy toward growth instead of despair. Here's a technique that builds real mental toughness. The next time you face a serious setback, try what I call the obstacle inventory. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this situation trying to teach me?" Instead of, "How can I avoid this pain?" ask, "How can I grow through this pain?" Maybe that job loss in Detroit is forcing Mike to finally pursue the trade certification he's been putting off for years. Maybe the marriage problems are highlighting communication issues that needed to be addressed anyway. Maybe his son's suspension is an opportunity to really connect with him and understand what's going on in his life. This isn't about finding silver linings or pretending that bad things are actually good. It's about training your brain to look for possibilities and lessons even in the midst of genuine difficulty. It's about building what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the ability to not just recover from setbacks, but to actually become stronger because of them. Mental toughness also means accepting that some days you're going to feel weak, and that's okay. In Las Vegas, I met a guy named Carlos who'd been through a brutal divorce and bankruptcy in the same year. He told me, "Some days I felt like a warrior ready to conquer the world. Other days I felt like hiding under my blankets and never coming out. I learned that both feelings were part of the process and neither one was permanent. The key is not letting your worst days define your overall trajectory." Mental toughness isn't about never falling down, it's about always getting back up. It's about treating each setback as data, not as proof that you're not strong enough to handle life. Here's a practical daily practice that builds real inner strength. Every morning, spend 5 minutes visualizing yourself handling a difficult situation with grace and wisdom. Not avoiding the situation or having it magically resolve, but responding to it in a way that makes you proud of who you are. This mental rehearsal prepares you for real challenges and reminds you that you have more strength than you think. The ancient Stoics believed that every human being has an inner citadel, a core of strength that can't be touched by external circumstances. Your job, your relationships, your health, your reputation, these things can all be taken away. But your character, your values, your ability to choose your response, these live in your inner citadel, and no one can touch them without your permission. Building mental toughness is about fortifying that inner citadel. It's about developing unshakable confidence in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you, not because you're guaranteed an easy path, but because you know you have what it takes to walk a difficult one with dignity and purpose. Remember, you're stronger than you think, more resilient than you know, and more capable than you've probably given yourself credit for. The storms of life don't come to destroy you, they come to reveal the strength that was inside you all along. 5. Why good things take time and how to wait without going crazy. Let me ask you something. Have you ever planted a seed and then dug it up the next day to see if it was growing yet? Of course not, that would be ridiculous. Yet when it comes to our own lives, we do this exact thing all the time. We start working toward a goal, and if we don't see immediate results, we panic, assume we're doing something wrong, or give up entirely. Maybe you're that aspiring musician in Nashville who's been playing coffee shops for 2 years and wondering why you're not headlining the Grand Ole Opry yet. Or perhaps you're the entrepreneur in Austin who launched a startup 6 months ago and can't understand why you're not the next unicorn company. We live in a world of instant everything, instant messages, instant food, instant entertainment, and we've forgotten one of the most fundamental truths about meaningful achievement: good things take time. Marcus Aurelius, who had to wait years to see the results of his policies and decades to understand the impact of his leadership, wrote something beautiful about this. Time is a river, a violent current of events, glimpsed once and already carried past us. And another follows and is gone. He understood that time has its own rhythm, its own flow, and fighting against that current only exhausts you. But here's what most people don't understand about patience: it's not passive waiting. Real patience, the kind that actually leads to success, is active preparation. It's like a farmer who plants seeds in spring and then spends the summer watering, weeding, and tending to the soil. He's not just sitting around hoping for a harvest. He's doing everything necessary to ensure that when harvest time comes, he's ready. Let me tell you about Maria, a graphic designer in Minneapolis who decided she wanted to transition into UX design. She knew it would take time to build the skills, create a portfolio, and break into a competitive field. But instead of getting frustrated with the timeline, she treated her transition like a masterclass in patience with purpose. Every day, she spent 2 hours learning new software, studying user experience principles, and working on practice projects. Some days she felt like she was making progress, other days it felt like she was moving backward. But she kept showing up, kept learning, kept building. It took 18 months before she landed her first UX role, but when she did, she was genuinely ready for it, not just technically, but mentally and emotionally prepared for the challenges it would bring. That's the difference between impatient waiting and purposeful patience. Impatient waiting is checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if that job called back, refreshing your bank account hoping your side hustle suddenly took off, or constantly asking, "Are we there yet?" like a kid on a road trip. Purposeful patience is using the waiting time to become the person who deserves what you're waiting for. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern psychology has now proven: the ability to delay gratification is one of the strongest predictors of success in virtually every area of life. But they also understood that this ability isn't just about willpower, it's about perspective. When you truly understand that meaningful things take time, waiting becomes less torturous and more purposeful. Think about the best things in your life right now. Your closest friendships, how long did those take to develop? Your professional skills, how many years of practice and learning went into building them? Your understanding of yourself, wasn't that a gradual process of growth and discovery? The things that matter most in life are almost never instant. Here's a practical technique for dealing with the frustration of waiting. Create what I call a progress inventory. Every week, write down 3 specific ways you've grown or improved, no matter how small. Maybe you had a difficult conversation with more grace than you would have 6 months ago. Maybe you learned a new skill or made a connection that could be valuable down the road. Maybe you simply showed up consistently when you didn't feel like it. I remember talking to James, a guy in Phoenix who was trying to build a consulting business while working a full-time job he hated. For the first year, he barely had any clients, and he was starting to wonder if he was delusional for thinking he could make it work. But when he started keeping a progress inventory, he realized how much he'd actually accomplished. He'd built a website, created a service offering, developed a pricing structure, learned how to network, and most importantly, proven to himself that he could stick with something difficult even when results weren't immediate. 2 years later, he was able to quit his day job and go full-time with his consulting practice. But he told me the real victory wasn't the money, it was discovering that he had the patience and persistence to see a long-term vision through to completion. Here's what changes everything about waiting: understanding that the waiting itself is part of the process, not just an obstacle to the process. Those months when Maria was learning UX design weren't just preparation for her real career, they were her real career. The discipline, the learning, the persistence, the problem-solving skills she developed during that time became just as valuable as the technical knowledge she gained. The Stoics had a beautiful concept called amor fati, love of fate. It means learning to love not just the outcomes you want, but the entire process of getting there, including the waiting, the uncertainty, and the gradual unfolding of results. It's about finding meaning in the journey itself, not just the destination. But let's be practical about this. How do you actually wait without going crazy? First, focus on what you can control during the waiting period. You can't control when that job offer comes, but you can control how you spend your time while you're waiting. You can't control when your creative project gets recognized, but you can control how consistently you work on improving it. Second, celebrate small wins along the way. Don't wait until you reach your ultimate goal to acknowledge progress. If you're trying to lose 50 pounds, celebrate when you lose 5. If you're building a business, celebrate your first customer even if they only spend $10. These small celebrations keep your motivation alive during the long journey toward bigger goals. Third, remember that timing isn't always about you. Sometimes you're ready for an opportunity, but the opportunity isn't ready for you. Sometimes the market needs to shift, or other people need to be in the right place, or circumstances need to align in ways you can't control or predict. Your job isn't to force the timing, it's to be ready when the timing is right. I want to leave you with this thought. Every person you admire, every success story that inspires you, every achievement that seems effortless from the outside, all of them involved years of patient, purposeful work that nobody saw. The overnight success that took 10 years. The natural talent that was actually developed through thousands of hours of practice. The lucky break that came to someone who'd been preparing for it for decades. Good things take time, not because the universe is testing your patience, but because good things are complex, and complex things require time to develop properly. Your job isn't to rush the process, it's to trust the process and use the time wisely. The harvest will come, but first, you have to be willing to plant the seeds and tend the garden. 6. How your worst days are actually making you stronger. Imagine watching a blacksmith at work. He takes a piece of raw metal, rough, brittle, and basically useless in its current form, and subjects it to intense heat and repeated hammering. To someone who doesn't understand the process, it might look like he's destroying the metal. But what's actually happening is transformation. Each strike of the hammer, each moment in the fire, is making that metal stronger, more flexible, and more useful than it could ever be in its original state. Your worst days work the same way. I know that might be hard to believe when you're in the middle of one. Maybe you're dealing with a job loss in Philadelphia, going through a painful breakup in San Diego, or watching a family member struggle with addiction in Kansas City. In those moments, it doesn't feel like you're being strengthened, it feels like you're being broken. But here's what Seneca, the ancient Stoic philosopher, understood about adversity. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Just like your muscles don't get stronger from the easy workouts, they get stronger from the ones that challenge them to their limits. Your character doesn't develop from comfortable circumstances. It develops from the situations that force you to dig deeper than you thought possible. Let me tell you about Rachel, a nurse in Chicago who went through what she calls her year from hell. In the span of 12 months, she lost her father to cancer, went through a messy divorce, had to move back in with her mother, and dealt with burnout from working COVID units. She told me, "I remember thinking, I can't handle one more thing. I'm at my breaking point." But here's what's interesting, she didn't break. Instead, she discovered reserves of strength she never knew she had. She learned she could function on less sleep than she thought, handle more emotional stress than seemed possible, and make difficult decisions under pressure. Most importantly, she learned that she could lose almost everything that felt important to her and still find reasons to keep going. 2 years later, Rachel looks back on that period not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of gratitude. "I wouldn't choose to go through it again," she says, "but I also wouldn't trade who I became because of it. I know now that I can handle whatever life throws at me because I've already survived things I thought would destroy me." That's the hidden gift of adversity. It shows you who you really are when everything comfortable gets stripped away. It reveals strengths you didn't know you had and capabilities you'd never been forced to develop. But here's the key, adversity doesn't automatically make you stronger. It's how you respond to adversity that determines whether it breaks you down or builds you up. The Stoics had a concept they called the obstacle as the way. They believe that the very thing blocking your path forward is actually the path forward. That job rejection isn't just a setback, it's information about what you need to improve or a redirection towards something better suited for you. That relationship ending isn't just a loss, it's an opportunity to learn about yourself and what you really need in a partner. I remember talking to David, an entrepreneur in Las Vegas whose first business failed spectacularly, leaving him $50,000 in debt and feeling like a complete failure. He could have let that experience convince him he wasn't cut out for business. Instead, he treated it like an expensive education. He analyzed every mistake, identified the skills he lacked, and used that knowledge to build his next venture more strategically. My first business failed because I was naive, overconfident, and didn't understand my market, he told me. My second business succeeded because I learned to be realistic, humble, and customer-focused. I couldn't have built the successful business without first building the failed one. Here's a practical exercise that can help you extract strength from your difficult experiences. Create what I call an adversity resume. Just like a regular resume lists your accomplishments, an adversity resume lists the challenges you've overcome and the skills you developed in the process. Maybe you navigated your parents' divorce as a teenager and learned how to be emotionally mature beyond your years. Maybe you struggled with anxiety in college and developed incredible self-awareness and coping strategies. Maybe you went through a period of unemployment and discovered you're more resourceful and resilient than you thought. These aren't just things that happened to you, they're qualifications that prepared you for future challenges. The key insight here is that strength isn't built in comfort, it's built in discomfort. Think about it. When do you learn the most about yourself? When everything is going smoothly, or when you're forced to adapt to unexpected circumstances? When do you develop the most compassion for others? When you've never experienced pain, or when you've been through your own struggles and can relate to theirs? But let's be clear about something. Acknowledging that adversity can make you stronger doesn't mean you should seek out suffering or pretend that painful experiences don't hurt. It means recognizing that since difficult experiences are inevitable parts of human life, you might as well extract whatever value you can from them. Seneca wrote about this beautifully. He said that we should approach our challenges like athletes approach training, not because we enjoy the pain, but because we understand that the temporary discomfort leads to lasting strength. The runner doesn't enjoy being out of breath, but she knows that pushing through that discomfort is what builds her endurance. Here's another way to think about it. Every challenge you face is like a test that life is giving you. But unlike school tests, you don't get graded on whether you get the right answer. You get graded on whether you keep showing up, whether you learn from the experience, and whether you use what you learn to handle the next test better. I know a woman named Lisa in Denver who went through a brutal custody battle that lasted 3 years. It drained her financially, emotionally, and physically. But she told me something profound. That experience taught me that I'm capable of fighting for what matters to me longer and harder than I ever imagined. Now, when I face any challenge, I think if I could get through 3 years of family court, I can get through anything. That's the real gift of surviving your worst days, not just the specific lessons you learn, but the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can handle hard things. It's like building a muscle memory for resilience. Each time you get through something difficult, you're creating evidence for yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances. The ancient Stoics believed that every human being has the capacity for what they called virtue, the ability to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline regardless of external circumstances. But virtue isn't something you're born with, it's something you develop through practice. And the best practice comes from the situations that challenge you most. So the next time you're going through a difficult period, try asking yourself these questions. What is this situation teaching me about myself? What strengths am I developing that I didn't have before? How is this experience preparing me for future challenges? What would I tell someone else going through something similar? Remember, you're not being punished by your difficult experiences, you're being prepared. Prepared for greater challenges, deeper relationships, more meaningful work, and a richer understanding of what it means to be human. Your worst days aren't trying to break you, they're trying to forge you into someone stronger than you ever thought possible. 7. The daily habit that makes you wiser. Even smart people miss this. Here's a question that might surprise you. What's the difference between someone who's intelligent and someone who's wise? Intelligence is about knowing facts and solving problems quickly. But wisdom? Wisdom is about understanding life, making good decisions under pressure, and learning from your experiences. And here's the thing most people don't realize: you can be incredibly smart and still make terrible life choices if you're not actively cultivating wisdom. I know lawyers in Washington, D.C. who can argue complex cases but can't figure out why their relationships keep failing. I know software engineers in Silicon Valley who can code brilliant algorithms but repeatedly make the same financial mistakes. Intelligence without wisdom is like having a powerful car with no steering wheel. You might go fast, but you're not necessarily going in the right direction. So what's the daily habit that builds real wisdom? It's something so simple that most people overlook it, and so powerful that it can transform your entire life if you stick with it. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca put it perfectly: as long as you live, keep learning how to live. The habit is this: daily reflection. Not shallow, how was my day thinking, but intentional, structured reflection about your experiences, decisions, and growth. It's about becoming your own life coach and teacher. Let me tell you about Marcus, a marketing executive in New Orleans who was successful by every external measure but felt completely lost internally. He was making six figures, had a nice house, but couldn't shake the feeling that he was just going through the motions without any real purpose. Then he started a simple practice. Every evening, he would spend 10 minutes writing in a journal, asking himself 3 questions. What did I learn about myself today? What decision could I have made better? What do I want to remember from today? At first, his answers were surface level. But as weeks turned into months, he began noticing patterns in his behavior, understanding his emotional triggers, and recognizing the difference between what looked good on paper and what actually brought him satisfaction. 6 months later, Marcus made a career change that shocked everyone. He left his corporate job to start a nonprofit focused on financial literacy. His friends thought he'd lost his mind, but Marcus had gained something more valuable than intelligence. He'd gained wisdom about what would make his life meaningful. Here's what most people miss about wisdom: it's not something that just happens with age. Wisdom is the result of intentionally processing your experiences and applying those lessons to future decisions. It's an active practice, not passive accumulation. The ancient Stoics were masters of this. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at his time, spent time every day writing reflections about his experiences and mistakes. These private conversations with himself became one of the most influential philosophy books ever written. Here's the specific practice that builds wisdom. Every evening, spend 10 minutes answering these 4 questions in writing. What challenged me today, and how did I respond? What did I do well today that I want to repeat? What would I do differently in a similar situation? What am I grateful for, and what does that tell me about my values? Sarah, a teacher in Phoenix, used this practice after a difficult divorce. She'd been making the same relationship mistakes repeatedly but couldn't figure out why. Through daily journaling, she began seeing patterns. She was attracted to emotionally unavailable people, avoided difficult conversations, and lost herself in relationships. I'd been repeating the same patterns for 15 years, she told me, but I never stopped long enough to examine them. Once I started reflecting daily, it was like turning on a light in a room I'd been stumbling around in the dark. The key is consistency, not perfection. Some days your insights will be profound, other days you'll just process routine experiences. But over time, this practice develops what I call life intelligence, the ability to make better decisions because you understand yourself, your patterns, and your values more clearly. James, a police officer in Minneapolis, started this practice after a difficult year dealing with traumatic situations. Through daily reflection, he began processing experiences more intentionally instead of carrying them as emotional baggage. I realized I was letting the worst parts of the job define everything, he said. When I started reflecting daily, I began noticing positive interactions too, people I helped, differences I made, moments that reminded me why I became a cop. It didn't change the hard parts, but it changed my relationship to them. Here's what's beautiful about this practice. It works regardless of your education or background. Wisdom isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking better questions and learning from your experiences. It's about becoming more thoughtful about your choices and more intentional about your growth. Daily reflection does something else valuable. It slows you down in a world constantly trying to speed you up. We live in a culture of instant reactions and constant motion. But wisdom requires pause, consideration, and willingness to sit with uncertainty while you figure out what you really think and feel. Most people are so busy living their lives that they never take time to learn from their lives. They repeat mistakes, miss opportunities, and wonder why they feel stuck. But when you make reflection a daily habit, you become an active participant in your own growth instead of just a passive recipient of whatever happens. Remember, the smartest person in the room isn't necessarily the wisest. Intelligence is about processing information quickly. Wisdom is about processing life deeply. And wisdom is available to anyone willing to pay attention to their own experience and learn from it consistently. Start tonight. 10 minutes for questions and the commitment to show up for yourself daily. Your future self will thank you for the wisdom you're building today. 8. Why helping others actually helps you. The science will surprise you. Here's something that might sound backward. The best way to feel better about your own problems is often to help someone else with theirs. I know when you're struggling, the last thing you want to hear is that you should focus on other people. But what I'm about to share isn't just feel-good philosophy, it's backed by solid science and ancient wisdom that can literally change your brain chemistry. Marcus Aurelius, who had every reason to be self-absorbed running the Roman Empire, wrote something profound: "What injures the hive injures the bee." He understood that we're all connected, and when we help others thrive, we create conditions that help us thrive too. Modern neuroscience has discovered something amazing about this. When you help someone else, your brain releases dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, the same chemicals that antidepressants try to regulate. Scientists call this the helper's high, and it's a real phenomenon that can improve your mood, reduce stress, and boost your immune system. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a software developer in Seattle going through the darkest period of her life. She'd been laid off, was going through a painful breakup, and had moved back with her parents at 32. She felt like a complete failure and spent days wallowing in self-pity. Then her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chin, fell and broke her hip. Jennifer's mom suggested she help with grocery shopping while Mrs. Chin recovered. Jennifer's first thought was, "I can barely take care of myself," but she agreed anyway. Something unexpected happened during those weekly grocery runs. For an hour or two each week, Jennifer wasn't thinking about her own problems. She was focused on Mrs. Chen's needs, listening to stories about her life in China and solving small problems like setting up pill organizers. "It sounds crazy," Jennifer told me, "but those hours helping Mrs. Chin were the only times I felt like myself again. When I focused on her needs, I stopped spiraling about my situation. And seeing her gratitude for simple things put my problems in perspective." After 2 months, Jennifer noticed she was sleeping better, had more energy, and felt more optimistic about her job search. She wasn't just helping her neighbor, she was inadvertently helping herself recover from depression and anxiety. This is what psychologists call post-traumatic growth through altruism. When we help others during our own difficult times, we often discover strengths we didn't know we had. We see that we can make a positive difference even when our lives feel chaotic. The ancient Stoics understood this intuitively. They believed humans are naturally social creatures designed to support each other. Epictetus taught that we find truest happiness not by focusing solely on our own needs, but by contributing to our community's well-being. Here's a practical test. The next time you're having a rough day, try what I call the 5-minute favor. Find one small way to help someone that takes no more than 5 minutes. Text a friend going through a hard time, leave a positive review for a local business, or help a coworker with a quick question. David, a teacher in Chicago, started doing this during pandemic burnout. Every day, he'd find one small way to help a colleague, sharing resources, covering duties, or sending encouraging messages. It didn't solve my burnout, he said, but it reminded me why I became a teacher. It reconnected me to the purpose behind the work. But what if you're barely keeping your head above water? How can you help others when you need help yourself? The Stoic approach is practical here. You don't have to solve world hunger. Sometimes the most powerful help is simply being present with someone struggling. Maria, a single mom in Phoenix dealing with financial stress, volunteered one evening a week at a food bank. I was embarrassed because I was using food banks myself, she said. But I realized I could help organize donations and talk to families in ways that people who'd never struggled financially couldn't. My experience with hardship made me better at helping others in similar situations. Here's what's beautiful. When you help others, you're proving to yourself that you have value and capability even amid your own struggles. You're gathering evidence that you're not just a victim of circumstances, but someone who can make a positive impact regardless of what you're going through. The science backs this up fascinatingly. Studies show people who volunteer regularly live longer, have lower depression rates, and report higher life satisfaction. The benefits are strongest when helping behavior is consistent and involves direct contact with those being helped. This doesn't mean reorganizing your life around service. It means finding small, sustainable ways to contribute to others' well-being as part of your routine. Maybe mentoring someone in your field, checking on elderly neighbors, tutoring kids, or being the person who always listens without judgment. Here's a practical challenge. For the next week, do one small act of kindness daily. Hold doors, let someone merge in traffic, compliment strangers, help carry groceries. Pay attention to how you feel afterward. Notice if it shifts your mood, energy, or perspective on your challenges. The ancient Stoics believed we're all part of something bigger, and our individual well-being is tied to our community's well-being. Modern psychology proves they were right. When we help others, we're activating neural pathways that promote resilience, optimism, and emotional regulation. Remember, you don't have to wait until your life is perfect to start helping others. Some of the most powerful help comes from people still working through their own challenges. Your struggles don't disqualify you from making a difference. They often qualify you to make a difference in ways that people who haven't struggled can. The next time you're overwhelmed by your problems, try shifting focus to someone else's needs, even briefly. You might discover that helping others isn't just good for them, it's one of the most effective ways to help yourself too. Your next steps to Stoic strength. As we wrap up our journey through the 8 ancient Stoic principles, I want to remind you that these aren't just philosophical ideas. They're practical tools you can use to navigate your own challenges. From embracing the present moment to cultivating gratitude and learning from adversity, each principle is designed to help you thrive even in the toughest times. Here's your challenge. Pick one of these principles and commit to practicing it for the next week. Whether it's the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique for anxiety or the daily gratitude practice, focus on mastering just one. Remember, small, consistent actions lead to significant change. If this video resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. Your support helps us reach more people who need to hear these messages. Share this video with a friend or family member who might be going through a tough time. Sometimes, a simple act of kindness can make a world of difference. And don't forget to subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel and hit the notification bell. We're building a community dedicated to practical wisdom for modern life, and you don't want to miss out on our upcoming content. Remember, you're part of a community who are committed to personal growth. Each day you choose to apply these Stoic teachings, you're not just surviving, you're building resilience and strength for whatever life throws your way. Thank you for being here, for choosing growth, and for your commitment to becoming the best version of yourself. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we'll continue our exploration of how ancient wisdom can transform our modern lives. Stay strong, stay stoic, and remember, your best days are ahead of you, waiting for you to create them.